our topic for this morning, the next topic for this morning would be about corporate careers. So the previous topic was about residency training. Ito naman, this is more of corporate careers. No? So this is part medyo our line, no? Parang line ko din, no? As an occupational doctor. Now, I'm going to introduce our next speaker for this morning. Actually, we're very lucky to have her this morning. No? Pinaunlakan niya tayo. And actually, she's a graduate from Ateneo, where she took her BS Psychology as a pre-medical course and proceeded with her Doctor of Medicine with a Master's in Business Administration, also at the Ateneo School of Medicine and Public Health. And then she pursued her Master of Public Health in 2018 at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Now for her corporate connections, affiliations, she was the medical consultant at Unilab Philippines Corporate Affairs in 2014. She was a Medicard Philippines and Aventus Clinics general physician, and she entered Ayala Corporation as the healthcare consultant in April of 2015. And she proceeded as the head of marketing and community engagement, also at AC Health. That's January 2016, and pursued and transferred to become the strategy and community director last 2017, also at AC Health. Now she is a strategy and external affairs head of AC Health. So ang swerte po natin for this morning to talk on corporate affairs. Let us welcome our dear speaker, Dr. Maria Carissa A. Alejandro. Doctora.
Hi everyone. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Doc. How are you?
Fine. Okay naman. Ang ganda-ganda mo, Doctora. You're so,
Hi, thank you.
Radiant. Yes po. Okay.
Doc, I have a few slides. Is it okay with you if I share my slides first and then we can
share that? Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, hold on. Okay, and I will put it on presenter view. Okay, I hope everybody can see my slides. I'll go back first. Okay. So again, thank you to the Young Doctors Conference for inviting me to join. And special thank you to Doc Anna who invited me. As I told Doc Anna, I'm always happy to support any of these career initiatives. I still think of myself as a young doctor too. So I'm very happy to share my own experience and really want to make this more of a conversation for everyone. So please feel free to ask your questions. This is really more informal. I just have slides because I wanted to show you some pictures and give you a little bit more color into what I do. So just call me Rizzy. As you can see on the slide, I head strategy and external affairs for AC Health, and I can tell you a little bit more about that too later. But wanted to start off by telling you a little bit more about myself, so personal sharing lang. As Dr. Jean mentioned, I graduated from Ateneo in 2014. That's my dad. And after many, many years na pinapaaral niya ako, finally nakagraduate then. But also, the path for med school to me wasn't as straightforward. I'm one of those people that Dr. Faye mentioned earlier who took a year off. So after graduating from college, I actually took a year off and did a lot of other things before finally deciding that I wanted to go to med school, and very deliberately chose Ateneo because of the MBA component. It was a little bit of a risk at the time. I was part of the third batch. So to be honest, a lot of the program work was in the very early stages. So we were a little bit like guinea pigs. But may perks din naman to being guinea pigs kasi they look out for you a lot and they make sure that they support you in any way that they can. And it's really been a big influence on my career and why I decided to go more into corporate health rather than clinical work. This is actually a snapshot of my classmates from my program in Johns Hopkins. I'm still in school right now. I started in November 2018, taking my Master's of Public Health. Public Health has has well, I wanted to say has always been a passion, but actually it just became a passion when I went into med school. And I can tell you the backstory of that later. But I started this program in 2018. It's a part-time program. For those of you who are interested in taking your master's in public health, it's a great program to look at. And there are really a lot of other options too, and so much flexibility. So the program I'm doing is part-time. You can also opt to do it full-time. But because I'm doing it part-time, medyo slow and steady tayo. I'll be graduating by 2022, hopefully, if I finish all my requirements by then. But it's a great experience because you really get to meet a very diverse set of people. And of course, the professors are really excellent. So good experience. This is a picture of my management team. So we had our planning session just February this year, which was also my last trip. Fortunately, before this whole pandemic and quarantine lockdown situation happened, we were able to sneak in one last trip. So this is our senior leadership team, and we do this annual planning session where we basically take a step back. We look at how we performed in the past year and think about what we're going to do in the following year and what our goals and targets are. And that's a big part of the work that I do on the strategy team. But I think that's one of the big things that I love about my work, being able to work with so many different types of people, so many different backgrounds. We work with people who have been 20, 25 plus years in Ayala Corp working in finance, strategy, a lot of consultants who have worked in different parts of healthcare. I even have people on our healthcare team whose background is nothing to do with health. We have someone who used to work in Jollibee. He used to set up mini stop stores. Had someone on my team before who used to sell chips. And so it's nice to work with such a diverse set of people. And then finally, these are pictures from two of the projects that I've been involved in the past few months. One on top, that's a picture of our QualiMed COVID referral triage center, which we set up when this whole pandemic happened. I'm one of those tiny people there. But you'll see that in corporate life in particular, you're always working in a group and you're always working in collaboration with other people. And then in the bottom, you'll see there our new Healthway logo. So we just recently integrated our clinics. They used to be called Family Doc with our Healthway clinics. So they're now all called Healthway. And Family Doc is now Healthway Family. So just to give you an idea of who I am and what are the things that I've been working on. And people always ask me how I ended up here. It's funny, when I told my dad that I didn't want to go into residency, sabi niya sa akin, so ibig sabihin nun, hindi ka na magiging doktor. And I always like to think that I'm still a doctor, just doing a different kind of medicine, and I guess healthcare on a more macro scale rather than on an individual patient scale. But I didn't always know that I was going to end up like this. I started out, I wanted to go to med school because I really, really wanted to be a surgeon. I think I watched too much Grey's Anatomy, but I really wanted to be Meredith Grey and be a surgeon. And then I went to med school and realized that I didn't really like surgery all that much. As a topic, and what I really enjoyed was being around kids. Prior to going to med school, I was actually a teacher, so I taught grade 2 8-year-old kids, and that was really such a fun experience for me. And so I thought I wanted to be a pedia. This one of my patients, with permission of course to post, but one of my patients in my pedia clerkship rotation, and it was one of the rotations that I enjoyed the most. The other rotation that I enjoyed, which was very surprising to me, was actually OB. And kung pwede lang sana mag-OB na walang gyne part, like magpapaanak ka lang forever, and you just do the births, I would have done it, because I think bringing a new baby into the world is one of the most exhilarating and most humbling experiences that you can have. You're bringing in something completely new into the world and helping a mom bring that life into the world. So I thought about being an OB too. And so these were the different things that I considered. But as I went through med school, I very quickly realized that in the Philippines in particular, a lot of our problems are not on the clinical side when it comes to healthcare. They're actually on the system side. So problems related to our healthcare system, problems related to the way we organize the different stakeholders within our healthcare system, or lack of organization or lack of communication. So I said that was what I wanted to do, more of public health and more of management. And I think I always say we have the best clinicians in the Philippines. You can export them anywhere in the world, and they compete with the very best clinicians globally. But no one really thinking about how we can help our healthcare system. And so that's why I decided I wanted to do more of that. But I did the unusual route that after med school, what I did was to go back to theater. So when I was in college, I did a lot of theater, and it really kept me grounded, and but it was something that I was really passionate about, and really helped me to discover myself also and who I was. And so after 5 years of medical school, I said, I'll go back to something that I really love. And so after 5 years, I went back to do a play. That's me there in that orange period costume, which was fun because you get to dress up, and for me it was like a coming back after 5 years of not having done it. This was a play called The Country Wife, or Ang Misis Kong Prom Day, which I did with Dula ang UP, and that was a good experience for me to sort of help myself get grounded again and really think about what I wanted to do moving forward. My big dream after graduating from med school was to go to the Department of Health, and I applied to the DOH at the time, to quite a few departments, but it took a few months and I started to get bored. I was moonlighting on the side also, as a GP with Medicard, and also with Aventus. And then after a few months, my friend, my classmate from med school, Archie, who was at that time working with Ayala Corp, said that he wanted to leave Ayala Corp to teach full time because that was really his passion. He wanted to be a biology teacher, and he was looking for someone to help to replace him as a consultant there. So I said, look, I'll apply. I'm not doing anything, and I haven't heard back from DOH. And so that picture that you're seeing on the screen is actually one of my first few days of work at Ayala Corp, where I started out as a healthcare consultant. They didn't even have a healthcare practice back then. It was just a group of crazy people who said that maybe Ayala Corp should get into healthcare, and let's get other crazy people who feel the same way also. And so decided to join them, and those crazy people are now all of my colleagues, and that picture that you saw previously. And so here I am today, and doing what I do. And people ask me like what I do on a day-to-day basis. So strategy and external affairs is the technical definition of what I do. Strategy is really more, I guess, thinking about what we have in our portfolio today, what we'd like to put into the portfolio to make sure that we're delivering on a bigger vision. We do a lot of monitoring. So we help the business units. We monitor them in terms of, are they hitting their targets? What targets should they set for the year? What should they be doing 3 to 5 years down the road? And then we also do a lot of what you call special projects. So we're really like a SWAT team. And this year, that was the main thing that kept us preoccupied. A lot of the special projects that we did with COVID. So setting up a COVID lab, setting up our hospitals to become COVID referral hospitals, helping out with the Ayala Group protocols. So any special project that our CEO, Paolo, thinks of, he deploys to us. And so you find yourself doing different things. One day you're making a courtesy call to the Department of Health. The next day you're at a barangay basketball court hosting a breastfeeding seminar for moms. So it's nice because you get that sort of diversity in the work that you do. And then we also do external affairs, so communications, PR events, that's also handled by our team. So that's a very brief overview. I wanted to share just maybe what were some of my learnings and reflections thinking about working in the corporate side of healthcare. And I'll start off by saying that definitely the career path to corporate life is not straightforward, especially if you're coming in as a doctor. And I like this little graphic that I have here because, as you can see, you don't know where to start, right? Aside from the fact that it's very complicated, you also don't know where to start. And I think in many ways that's true for a lot of doctors who are not going into residency. It's easy when you graduate from med school and you go the traditional route because it's already very straightforward. Like, you know that, okay, after taking the boards, mag-apply ako to pre-res. After pre-res for 2 weeks or a month, depending on the program, I'm going to go into residency. And then we all know first year is the worst, second year ganito, etc., etc. And then after residency, I'll go to fellowship. And so there's a very straightforward step ladder, if you will, if you're going to go into the clinical aspect of it. But for something like the corporate aspect or the public health aspect, it's so difficult to find out where to start. And honestly, I got lucky. As I told you, it was really just a referral of a friend that got me started to where I am today. And so I think that's one thing that you have to realize, if you're thinking of going more into the corporate or public health side, that you have to be patient too, because it won't be as straightforward and as easy as going into the usual clinical route. That being said, I guess a lot of people can help you along the way. There are a lot of people who are working in the corporate side and in the public health side who are more than happy to bring in new people in the team. For example, everyone on our team now in the strategy team of AC Health were people that I actively recruited. Nikki, Dr. Nikki, Dr. K. Janelle. So all of them, I really like chased after them, because it's also hard to find very good, competent people who are equally as passionate about healthcare as you are. And so when you find those types of people, you latch onto them and you don't want to let them go. And so for those of you who want to get started, start by talking to people, tapping your network, seeing who can give you a lead. And I think you have to start by finding something you believe in, and it doesn't have to be perfect. For me, what I really believe in is the vision of what we're trying to do in AC Health, which you can see. It's funny, when I was looking for pictures to put up on this presentation, this drawing that you're seeing was one of my very first projects working in AC, to come up with a diagram of what our vision is. And our vision is really to be able to build out an integrated healthcare ecosystem. And that's what you're seeing on the graphic. And what is it, 5 years later, it's still the same thing. We still use this exact graphic because it's still what we're trying to build out. This is a picture of our very, very first clinic that we opened in Buhay na Tubig in Imus, Cavite. It's, as I mentioned earlier, called Family Doc. And this is the first team that we had on board to do it. And my very, very first big project was to think of what the brand name would be for our clinics. They didn't have a brand name for it at that time yet. And then, medyo low budget pa kami noon, wala kaming budget for consultants. So I was literally outside, along the street. May payong naman ako. So, naghanap ako ng mga people who could answer the survey and give us feedback on the brand. Like, do you like the okay ba tong colors na to? Okay ba yung Family Doc? Would you go to a clinic called Family Doc? So very, I guess, rolling up your sleeves and doing something completely different after having been in medical school for so long. But you look back on it and it's nice because you sort of see your baby grow. We had one branch in December 2015, and now Family or Healthway Family has over 70 branches in the greater Metro Manila. So while I don't see patients directly on a one-to-one basis, there's also some kind of fulfillment knowing that you were part of building up that entire clinic network in some way, and then you were part of the original team that set it up. So I guess find something that you believe in and take a chance on it. I mean, at the time, we were one of the first few groups putting up a primary care clinic. People knew about multi-specialty clinics. They knew about corporate clinics, but primary care clinics was something that was very new at that time. So take a chance on something that you believe in, and then try to build it up from there. And somewhere along the way, if you find that it's not a good fit for you, it's okay to switch. It's okay to try to find other things that you feel passionate about and that you care about. And so what I will say though is that corporate life is very different. I remember my very first day at work, my boss Bea was briefed me in the morning. We had an orientation and she left me with my other colleague, Paul, who was also on his first day of work at that time. And she said, okay, I have to leave you because I have a bunch of meetings, but let's catch up at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, so I start telling her, this is what we did, blah, 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 blah. And she goes, oh, I'm so happy that you were able to download all of these things. And napaisip talaga ako, sabi ko, sorry, was I supposed to download any file or email because I didn't download any file? And she was like, oh, no. When we say download in corporate speak, we just mean like you endorse. Like the same way that we would use endorse for doctors and residents, their version is download. So pag na-download mo na, parang na-endorse mo na sa kanila. And then it's funny because that's from the doctors learning the corporate perspective, but it's also you become sort of like a translator for the non-doctors in your team, and you explain medical terms to them. So one time, I was with my boss in a meeting, and he was talking about how we needed to hire more phlebotomists, to draw blood from our patients so that we could do the mobile lab and everything. But instead of phlebotomist, he kept saying lobotomist. So he kept saying, we need to hire more lobotomists. And mahirap talaga pag hindi magaling yung lobotomist, hindi one shot, ganyan. So I was like, okay, sir, it's phlebotomist po. Iba po yung lobotomist, which is what you're seeing on the slide. But it's the funny thing for me is depending who your audience is, they'll laugh at either one joke. So the corporate people will laugh at my download kwento, and then the doctor people will laugh at my lobotomist kwento. So it's funny because you sort of become the in-between person, and you have to learn both languages, and you help translate for these different groups. You will have to learn a different set of skills. A lot of things that I had to learn. Even if I had my MBA, which was a big help, you also have to learn a lot of things once you get into the company or once you understand the way that they do things, because not all companies do things the same way also. And then there's also a particular mindset. Like I noticed, for example, that businessmen are a lot more comfortable with I guess having information that's ambiguous or not so certain. They're able to make decisions based on the best available information that they know, versus like, let's say, doctors or researchers who will need to refer like to a wealth of evidence, and it has to be like peer-reviewed journals. It has to be by the Lancet or the Cochrane the review and everything like that. And so just different mindsets, and learning how to operate with different sets of information that you have available. So it's something that you embrace, being part of the corporate life in a while. One of the things that I really like is in the corporate setting, I find that your age doesn't matter as much. And I know that's changing also in the clinical aspect of it. But we have a very young team, for example, in AC Health, and your opinions will always get heard. People look to you for ideas, even if you're really young. You feel like you're the youngest there on the table, but they look to you for your thoughts and your ideas. And that's something that I really appreciated about being in the corporate setting. One other funny story I like to tell is in medical school, we're always taught like you have to know all the answers. But in the corporate life, I realized that part of doing the work also is being able to ask the right questions. I remember in clerkship and internship, you were always so scared to ask questions kasi baka sabihin ng consultant, bakit hindi mo alam? Hindi mo pa ba nabasa yan, etc. But in the corporate world, sometimes you go to a meeting and the person who had the best input in the meeting is the one who asked the question and not necessarily answered it. And so these are just some of the nuances and the things that you learn. And I guess you learn to enjoy it also along the way. What I will say though is that there will always be days and nights when work is work. Like it's the part that's not enjoyable. And if you're thinking that, oh, I'm going to do corporate work because it's less toxic and less demanding than, let's say, a residency, it's true to a certain extent. Like I do get to go home every night to my own bed. I have my weekends most of the time. But there will always be moments when work is work. And I'm showing you a picture of my calendar. This was at the height of the whole COVID situation. We had just been in quarantine for about a month here. This is end of April towards May. And a lot of our COVID projects were opening up during this time. And I remember it was a super hectic time for us. We would start work at 7. So you see my calendar there. It's as early as 7 and all the way until 8 p.m. And it was back-to-back meetings. Like you were, syempre all work from home, right? So you were going from one Zoom meeting to another, and then you were jumping on in between, may magte-text, may tatawag sa'yo, etc. And then you also, at the end of the day, when you get to 8 o'clock, you're not done yet because you have to prepare for the next day. So you need to make slides pa, and then even you can see here, Labor Day, May 1 was a holiday, but we also had to do site visits then. We also had meetings then. Even Sundays, we had meetings. So it's its own kind of toxic. I think it's its own kind of stress. It's not the same type exactly. I don't want to compare because I think the jobs are completely different. But be ready to work also and to work hard. And if you're doing something because you think you're doing it because it's easy, I would suggest that you rethink what you really want to do, because I think at some point all work becomes work regardless of what you're doing. And I guess what gets you through all of that work is be prepared to learn and to relearn things. And grit goes a long way. And so it's one thing to be IQ smart or book smart. It's another thing to just really have grit and sit down and say, okay, aaralin ko to. Or sit down and say, babasahin ko to. I'm going to do the research. And we all went through that in medical school, right? You know that. And for those of you who have tried maybe going into residency, or you still remember internship, parang it's just grit. Like you just get through it, you power through it. And the same way, even the corporate life is like that. You have to learn and relearn things. Like here, what you're seeing on your slide is actually a picture of an income statement. And so I had to relearn all the financial aspects of it and how to model. And it's really not easy, especially if you haven't looked at numbers since college. And so you have to relearn that. And then when I started out at work, I was using more of my MBA, and now because of the pandemic, I'm using more of my public health hat also. And so you see here we have an epi curve of our cases in the Ayala group for COVID-19, and you relearn that also, and you try to bring in the public health side and the medical side into the work that you do. And so be ready for that, to learn new things also, and it's really not going to be easy, but it's very fulfilling also in its own way. This is my second to the last, and just one of my, I guess, if I want to end with something that I want you all to remember, is find something that's a good fit for you. Not all companies are created the same. Not all of them have the same values. Not all of them have the same culture. And so find something that's a good fit for you, and surround yourself with the people who you want to be in the future. So make sure that the people you spend time with are the kind of people that you see yourself becoming, and not only from a professional basis, but also on a personal basis. Like they're the kind of people that you respect and you admire and that you'd like to be in the future. So on the upper left picture there with the banners, that's a picture of my team. So that's Janelle on the leftmost, that's me after, that's Doc Kay and Doc Nikki. And really, throughout all the work that I've been doing, it's so important to be part of a good team. And a lot of the good work that we do that comes out of our team is a group effort, and not just an individual person working on it. So it's just so much, I have so much thanks and love for my team, and really could not have done anything without them. So you have to surround yourself with people like that who support you and who really push you to be a better version of yourself. On the right-hand side, that's my cancer center team. That's Dr. K in the maroon hat, and then Ruby, our CFO, who's a long-time Ayala executive, 20 plus years in the company, but really a great mentor for me. We call her our tita. So she's our Tita Ruby. And then that's me in the orange hat, and my boss, Paolo, who's been really an incredible mentor, and really, I guess, opened my eyes to the management, corporate side of healthcare, the bigger things and the bigger vision of what we're trying to build out in AC Health. And then finally, in the bottom, you see via Zoom meeting, those are our senior leaders in the Ayala group. And as you can see, there's a lot of us on the team, very different backgrounds. And so you learn from them and you collaborate with them. And it's a great opportunity to be working with such a great team. So I guess that applies whether you're in corporate life, residency life, or doing clinical work or public health work. Try to surround yourself with people who you really want to be with and who you look up to and who are better than you. So that means that you're also becoming better just by being with them and learning from them. And finally, I'll end it by saying, whatever you decide to do, find something that makes you feel alive. And Doc Faye, I was listening to her talk before this, and her equivalent was fall in love with something. And I guess that's what being in love feels like, right? Makes you feel alive. And so find something that you really care about and that really excites you. And take the time to find it. It doesn't happen overnight. I guess it's just like finding the right person. Parang the in love analogy works, right? Like it happens for some people that they fall in love in an instant. For others, it takes time to build it up. And in the same way, when you think about your passion, sometimes you know right away and you know it in an instant, and sometimes it takes a while for you to find out what you really care about and what you're passionate about. But find that, whatever it is. And you're seeing here a picture of, this was just 2 days ago. We had a big signing for one of my projects, which is 3 years in the making already, and really blood, sweat, tears, late nights, early mornings trying to get it done. And finally, we signed a partnership for it. I can't give too many details about it yet because the press release is coming out end of October. But after all the work that you do, sometimes it's easy to get caught in the day-to-day work and you forget like the bigger picture of why you were in it to begin with. And it's good to be able to step back and to find that thing that makes you feel alive. For me, it's the many projects that we work on with AC Health. This project in particular is our cancer hospital project, and something that I really feel strongly about. And after talking to so many cancer patients and so many physicians also, and realizing that there are so many pain points to cancer care in the Philippines and that we can do things better. And so that's something that I feel passionately about. And so you have to find that thing also that motivates you, something that makes you feel alive. And alive doesn't mean just always good, right? It's not always going to be smooth sailing. You'll feel both the good times and the bad times. And I guess that's what life is about, like you have the all the successes and the wins, but you have the setbacks, the failures. You have a lot of waiting. You have a lot of anticipation. And so find that thing that makes you feel alive and that makes you want to be a better person and a better doctor. So I will end with that. But feel free to ask your questions. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about my experience or about how to get started on corporate health. I have my cell phone number up on the screen and also my email address. If you'd like to email me to ask me a question, you can do that too, or you can message me too. That's fine. But thanks again for the Young Doctors for inviting me to speak, and I hope that was helpful for you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Can we call you Dr. Rizzy?
Of course,
Okay.
of course. Please.
Yes, Dr. Rizzy.
Call me Rizzy. That's fine.
Yeah, okay. So, actually, ang gusto ko sanang itanong sa'yo ng first question is, how do you cope with the math? Kasi alam ko, ang hirap-hirap ng math, di ba, sa corporate. No? Kasi especially businessmen, they understand figures. No?
Yes.
So, how do you deal with, I mean, if you have a project, how do you sell it to your bosses?
The secret is, yes, it can be like overwhelming a little bit, and they have all of these very fancy terms. Like you'll hear terms like EBITDA, ROI, NIAT, payback. So intimidating, but the real secret is it's all basic math. It's addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Promise. You just have to learn the terms, and then everything you do is almost basic math. We don't do any advanced like calculus or even very, very advanced algebra. It's really just basic math. And so my advice is like to anyone who's looking into doing this, don't get overwhelmed by the fancy terms and the intimidating Excel spreadsheets because they can be very intimidating. But just try to learn it one by one and take the time. Like I remember spending hours just looking at one Excel sheet para lang maintindihan ko siya. And there's no shame in doing that. No shame in learning.
So for our students watching right now, maybe it's time that you post your questions for our speaker. Dr. Rizzy, I'm wondering, are you interested in going back to public health? Because you said that you wanted to enter DOH before.
Yeah, I still think about it from time to time, maybe in the future. I'm really happy with the work that we're doing now because a lot of the work that I do is also public health, except from the private sector perspective. So okay, then I got lucky in that way that I still get to practice public health, especially in this pandemic situation.
Alam mo, yung Ayala is also close to my heart. You know, when I graduated, actually when I passed the board, the very first job that I had was working for Ayala doon sa mga pre-employment. no? Mga
Oh,
general
really?
practitioners, yung mga ganon. So we go from one company to the other. Doon ako talaga na-orient na, ay, ganito palang ginagawa sa ano. There is such a thing pala as annual physical exam. Yung mga ganon-ganon pala. And actually, matagal na yon, no? Alam nyo naman yung age ko. Malayo naman yung age gap natin. Definitely, no? Pero, sige, share ko na lang. You know, I, I was like receiving like 150 pesos per day. Ganon nakatagal. No, ganon nakatagal yung annual PE before, no? And so when I heard that I was going to moderate somebody from Ayala. Wow, parang ang laki ng tuwa ko, no? Uy, bumalik. Ikaw naman flashback, no? So, being in Ayala, no, what would you consider your trophy so far? Yung magandang project na nagawa mo that you can say na, ay, this is one of my best practice na nabigay ko sa Ayala.
There are several. I think the one that comes top of mind to me right now is our primary care clinics. So they're now called Healthway Family, and that one I feel so strongly about because I was part of the team that put up the first clinic, and then now it's grown to this entire network. And so what I like most about that project is, I guess, not just the scale of it, but the whole focus on primary care. We all know that here in the Philippines, our primary care sector is really underdeveloped, but it's actually what we need more of. We need more primary care doctors. A lot of patients, they don't know where to go, so they end up going to the ER. And for all of us who have done our ER rotations, we know that 80% of the people who are there don't really need to be there. They just don't know where to go. And so I think I'm also so proud of it because of the contribution that we've made to primary care and advancing primary care in the Philippines. So that's one of the projects that I'm really proud of. Another project would be as I mentioned earlier, the cancer hospital that we're trying to build out. So this will be the first dedicated cancer hospital in the Philippines. So 100 beds, just all dedicated to cancer. And our vision here is we want it to be very affordable. Kasi what we realized po when we did our research is a lot of these cancer patients, ang biggest pain point is really napakamahal from cancer. I think in our estimate, Doc Jean, if you can imagine, in the first year alone, you will spend ₱1 million easily. And a lot of patients don't have that kind of money. And so we said, okay, if we are going to build a hospital, it has to be able to help those types of patients, make it more affordable for them without sacrificing the quality of their treatment. So that's the big plan for the hospital. That's what we're trying to build up. And hopefully we'll have that up by 2023. So these are just some of the examples. I can go on and on actually, but those are top of mind for me.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Dr. Ano. I have a question here. It says, Doctora, what's the most challenging thing or situation you have faced in the corporate world?
Oh, wow. What is the most challenging situation I have faced in the corporate world? I would say, I guess the first, I'll cite two examples. One challenge is really, I guess, more of on the technical side of it. And so one of the biggest challenges I've had is to build a business case from the ground up, right? Because you have to talk to so many people, you talk to patients, you talk to doctors, you talk to suppliers, you talk to your finance people, you have to talk to the marketing people, etc. And it's so much work, just being able to collaborate and build up that business case. And then it's funny because after all of that work, it comes down to maybe 5 or 10 slides. And 5 or 10 slides is all you have to be able to get your message across and to be able to tell like your board that we should really be doing this project, or we should be really investing our money here. And you're competing with all of the other projects where they could potentially put their money, right? So they can put their money in real estate or in banking or telco, right? And versus convincing them to do healthcare. And so I would say that's one of the biggest challenges I've had is being able to convince people to be invested in a project. And then second challenge, I think, is just working with different kinds of people, different personalities, and you'll have to adjust to that also, right? With I would say if you're used to being in medical school and having worked with doctors for a while, there's a certain flavor. And then you go to the corporate world, and the people there are a certain type also, and they're a certain flavor also. And you have to be able to manage and work with different kinds of people. So challenging, but very fun, and part of what makes the work exciting.
Okay. So do we have a next question? Yes. Okay. So just curious, how good is the compensation in a corporate med?
It can be good. I don't speak for all companies, but I think it really depends on which company that you're with. Ayala has a very good reputation of taking care of its employees, and they do take good care of us in AC Health. We have, of course, our apart from our salary, all of the benefits. We well, I joke about it now, but actually, when I came in, I had no idea that you had all of these corporate benefits. I didn't even know that you got vacation leaves or sick leaves, because ni naman uso ang vacation leave or sick leave among doctors, right? So
Yeah.
all of the things that you learn when you go into the corporate side of it. I will say though that the compensation in corporate med is also benchmark. So meaning that they won't pay you an outrageously high amount. They won't pay you an outrageously low amount also. Usually all of these HR teams, they benchmark to each other. So people in our team, for example, will know what other types of doctors are getting paid. They will know what other types of consultants are being paid. And so what you will be compensated will be fair. It will be within that range. So don't expect something naman like parang, oh my God, you won the lotto, pwede ka na mag-retire, etc. It's a really good package. For AC Health, they take good care of us. And you do have the flexibility to find the package that works for you if you're looking for a job in the corporate life, because there's so many companies, and you can go to a company that's really a good fit for you.
Yeah, and if I may add, I think the difference between the corporate rate, no, being paid to the doctors is, I think it's per hour, no. There are companies who pay physicians per hour, unlike the clinician who is being paid per patient.
Correct.
May diferensya, di ba? Okay.
Correct.
So, another more, may question pa ba tayo? Do you have questions? Okay. And I wish Doctora is my head when I was in with QualiMed. Very insightful, Doc. Thanks. Oh, it's a
Thank you. You
comment.
can still come back to Balimed or to Healthway. Join us. We're always looking for doctors to join us. I know I'm talking about the corporate life now, but I'll plug also Healthway, Healthway and Polymed, and Health Now, which is our telehealth platform. So all of these platforms, we're looking for doctors to join us. So even if you don't want to do corporate, if you want to be a clinician, you have all of these options also within AC Health.
Yeah. Doctora, how do you keep them? No? Kumbaga, it's very common nowadays, no, millennials. Sorry guys. The younger batches, they tend to hop from one company to the other. So do you have any tips on how to make them stay?
Yeah, I think people will stay if they're engaged with a particular project, or if they feel passionate about something. Kumbaga, they're not just doing tasks that they're checking off of their list. If they really feel like they're part of a bigger project and that their insight and their input matters, they'll stay. And so I think part of being able to get doctors to stay is to make them understand the bigger vision of what we're trying to do. Really make them a part of the team. Don't just treat them as someone who's seeing patients for you or like providing services for you. Make sure that they also give their feedback and that you're taking their insights into consideration. So that would be my advice. But that's hard because you're right. People
Yeah.
now are very open to exploring. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So there's another question here, Doctora. Doctora, do you believe that doctors are great clinicians but poor managers? And how can we improve on this?
Great question. I will say that if you were a doctor, and we're all doctors, right? We're all GPs, and if you eventually people specialize, right? And so you wouldn't go to a cardio if you were going to give birth, in the same way that you wouldn't take your kids to an OB, right? You take them to a pedia, and that's because you know that a speech specialty requires a very specific skill set, and each specialty requires like a certain level of experience for you to get to being a very good doctor. And I think it's the same with being a manager, right? That there are a very specific set of skills required. There's experience that's required also for you to be a good manager. And if for you to expect that as a doctor you can easily become a good manager, is I think you be setting yourself up for trouble, because it's not always that easy. And in the same way, a manager just couldn't barge into a clinic and claim to be a doctor, right? And so I think that's part of the mindset that has to shift, that all of us who are doctors who are thinking of going into the management space need to understand that there's also a lot of things that you need to learn coming in. And there's a lot of, I guess, research and studying that you'll have to do on the management side. And you would treat it with the same respect that you treat your specialty or your clinical practice, right? That you need to be able to make sure that you're getting better at it, that you're upskilling, that you're learning the right things that you need to. And so to answer the question directly, do I think that clinicians become poor managers? I think it's not necessarily one is to one, right? I know a lot of great clinicians who are also great managers, but they worked hard to do it. And I think it can be done. You just have to do the work behind it. And don't be afraid to learn. In the same way that we also learned everything that we know in medicine, you can learn how to be a good manager. Just that you have to take the time to do it.
Okay. Next. Great talk. And so inspired to look as fresh. See, sabi sa iyo, doktora, so pretty talaga, ganda eh. Kita ko pa ganito sa admire ngayon, oh. Diba? Okay. So, what else? Do you have any more questions, guys? Meron pa? Okay. Siguro meron akong isang question kay doktora coming from occupational medicine. Ano magandang contribution kaya ni Ayala para sa advancement ng practice of occupational medicine in the Philippines?
Good question, Doc. You know, that's something that's very top of mind right now because of this whole COVID situation. And I think we have a lot of work in where we do a lot of work in occupational health through Healthway. So we have our Healthway corporate clinics. We actually have clinics within offices, or for our corporate clients, we go on site. And in the past year, the dynamic has changed so much. Before, people would think of occupational health as a requirement. Like Dole says, you need to have a nurse there. You need to have X number of beds. You need a doctor there. But now, with this whole pandemic situation, I think the companies now have such a bigger appreciation for the work that occupational health physicians do. Kumbaga, ngayon lang na-appreciate how important it is to have a good occupational health partner, a good occupational health advisor. And I think in AC Health and in Healthway, what we're trying to do is make sure that we move not just from providing services, but more to providing really population health for our corporate clients. So I think, Doc, you'll know this better than I do. It's not just about providing a service. We really want to make sure that the employees within the company are healthier, that they're doing their annual physicals, that they're doing their executive checkups, and you want the population overall to be healthier. So I think for us, it's shifting that thinking that this is not just a consultation or a nurse or a clinic. It's really an overall population health approach that we're taking.
Okay. Now we have another question. Hi, Doctora. Is having a position corporate world at the same time practicing your medical specialty possible and manageable?
Good question. I don't I don't do it personally, but I know a lot of people who do it. So they have a clinical practice that they keep in the evenings. So usually they do their corporate work in the mornings, like 8 to 5 or 8 to 6, and then they do their clinics after work. So they have their clinics at like 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then until nighttime, and then they do it on weekends. So it is possible. I don't do it myself because my work really is a full-time job, and it entails me to be completely devoted to it. And so I really haven't kept up a clinical practice except for my office mates. So ang mga pasyente ko na lang mga office mates ko who send me pictures of their tonsils and their rashes. But other than that, I think, so it's possible. It also, I guess, how much time you want to devote to each. So I know there are some doctors who really want to devote bulk of their time to their clinical practice, and then they do consulting on the side. So, for example, a lot of our consultants on the cancer hospital, they have a clinical practice, but they also join us for meetings. Maybe they work with us. Siguro they do maybe 4 hours, 5 hours in a week that they work with us, they join us for meetings. So you can do that too. It depends just how much time you want to devote to each.
Actually, to the person who asked that, it is so possible. I know of a lot of people who, meron nga mga occupational doctors who are also neurosurgeons, pediatricians, na nagpa-practice sila at the same time. Okay. So our next question is, Doctora, your comments on moonlighting? Ano to? Are the young doctors just want, there are young doctors just want to moonlight forever? Bakit po kaya? Okay. So,
yeah, I guess I'll speak from the people I know who are moonlighting. I think for them, they're still trying to find what it is that they're passionate about. You what I ended with now, what's the thing that makes you feel alive, right? And so sometimes it's not as straightforward. And moonlighting is a good option when you're thinking about where you want to go, right? It allows you to practice as a doctor. And also I think it's good exposure because you get exposed to different types of patients also. And depending on where you moonlight, you get to manage them. And that's career development also. I mean, that is also a good experience in itself, and I think will make you a good doctor too. I think for a lot of the doctors now, the lifestyle component is a big part of it also. So I know for a lot of people who moonlight, what they like about it is compared to residency, you have more control of your time. And so they moonlight because they want to be able to keep that balance between their personal life and their professional life. So that's okay too. I think to each his own, right? And there's no, as Dr. Faye mentioned, there are very many ways that you can contribute to society, and you can do it. It doesn't have to be just by being a clinician. You can do it through many other ways. And so if moonlighting makes you feel like you're fulfilled and it's really what gets you excited, and it's what makes you feel like you're making the world a better place, then by all means, you should completely keep doing that.
Next, we have, does family doctors still offer the training in family medicine and wellness?
Yes, we still do. So we have a family medicine residency. It's just going to be transferred. The brand name will be different. So it used to be a family doc. Now it's going to be Healthway Family. But the residency training is still ongoing, and we still have that program. So if you want to apply, please do. We're looking for more doctors to join the Healthway Family team.
Yes, and guys, maganda yan. You should apply there. You know why? Kasi with the launching of the universal health care, they will be needing primary physicians. Di ba, Dr.
So true. Yeah.
So, maganda yung ganon. Mag-apply na kayo habang pa. Andyan. Okay, I think we have another question. Hi, Dr. Rizzy Alejandro. Thanks, your nice insights and experiences. May I ask what positions can MD degree without business degrees? What can you take, no? And then may I also ask how long anyone with the MD degree have, how long, no? Siguro does the MD contractual employee if he or she applies in the corporate world? Okay.
Okay. I think there are a lot of positions that you can apply to, even if you don't have a business degree. A lot of companies look for consultants. So they look for doctors who have had other experiences because they want to be able to get their insights and, let's say, build that into a business case or get their insights into operations for a particular business unit that they have. So that's definitely one role that you can start out with as a consultant. There What I do is slightly different from what Dr. Jean does. That's more occupational health, right? So there's also that option. And I think you don't need a business degree to do that, but you do need training. Am I right, Doctora? You have your training for
Yes,
occupational health and all.
yes, we have the basic course, and there's a diplomate and the fellow.
Correct. So you can do
Yes.
that too. And that doesn't require a business degree. I think you just have to complete the training for
Yeah.
occupational medicine. And then in terms of how long you need to be a contractual employee, it's a little bit different depending on where you work. So there are companies where you're really employed on a contract basis. So meaning for a fixed time period within, like, let's say 6 months or 2 months, depending how long your engagement is. If you are going to be a regular employee, the standard probation period is usually 6 months. And after 6 months, you become a regular employee. But if you're really good at what you do, even before 6 months, you can become regularized already. It depends on what your arrangement with the company is. If they're offering you a consultant position, or a regular employee position. So that's also my advice for those of you who want to apply to corporate life. Look into what type of engagement that company is offering you, and they have their pros and cons.
Yeah. And I agree with Dr. Rizzy. It's actually it's case to case. Depende naman yun sa company eh. There are companies who offer talaga naman permanent positions, di ba, Doktora?
Yes.
But there are also companies who just take in part-time doctors. No, pwede rin contractual sila, renewable every 6 months, may mga ganon. Okay. So meron pa ba tayong questions? You have questions? Some more? Asan na yung mga questions nyo habang nandiyan pa si Dr. Rizzy? Kamusta naman ang clinic utilization, Doktora?
Oh, it's been challenging though. Walang nagpupunta sa clinic
Challenging, no?
yun. Yeah, it's a big challenge for it. Starting to go up na though, a little bit better. Kasi when this
Yeah.
March started, yung talaga
Hirap,
bagsaking
no?
na.
Oh, mahirap talaga. And thank you for appreciating occupational medicine. Di ba? You said that we're kind of being noticed right now because of the pandemic. Okay. Doctora, here's another question. During the COVID crisis, some companies were forcing MDs to do all sorts of questionable tests like the rapid antibody testing. Paano po yun?
Yeah, actually, the rapid antibody testing, we were one of the companies who were doing that also at the beginning. And I will put that into context because at the time, I think people forget that in the very early days, we didn't have a lot of options, right? We had one PCR lab for the entire country. And
All right.
so correct, Doc. And then there was a time na the turnaround time there umabot na ng 2 weeks because of the backlog that they had. So fortunately, that capacity has improved. I think a lot of the companies who recommend rapid antibody testing or these rapid tests, sometimes it's education. They don't know that there are other choices, or they don't know that they're using it in the wrong way, or they don't know that there are other alternatives na available. And so I think as a doctor practicing there in that company, if you think that they're not using the test in the correct way, you should absolutely voice out your concern. That's one of the things also in being in the corporate side na we're very open to hearing your feedback and your opinion. In fact, sometimes kasi if you're trained very traditionally in the old school way, you're not allowed to question the practices or like ask too many questions, or you're afraid, right, to do it. But I find that in the corporate setting, there's much more openness to that. So if you're uncomfortable with any practice, and that's whether it's COVID testing or maybe even your safety protocols or maybe even clinical protocols or management that they're asking you to do, you should absolutely raise it with the management and make sure that you get your opinions heard. They will listen to Risa naman.
Okay, good. Do we have any more questions, guys?
Yeah,
Oo nga,
open for more corporate physicians. Yes, we are. So you can join. I can't plug Healthway enough. But also for those of you who want to do teleconsultations, like let's say you want to continue working from home, you can also try Health Now, which is our home telehealth app. So you can download it on your phone, or you can check out our website, and then you can actually see patients from there. So it's also a good alternative for those of you who want to be able to stay at home and manage your own time.
Ayan. Actually, maganda yung sa aming mga sa aming mga occupational doctors, maganda ang feedback ng Healthway sa amin, no? Even the companies that I talk with, maganda yung image at saka yung feedback. So maganda ang service.
Good to hear. Pag may hindi magandang feedback, Doc, let me know. Offline na lang.
Sige. So please introduce us to the components of Ayala Health.
Sure. So Ayala Health, we have different business units, different pillars. As you saw earlier in my slide, the vision is really to be able to build an integrated healthcare ecosystem. We have 4 different pillars. The first pillar is pharmacy. And under pharmacy, we have our generica drugstores. So I hope you're familiar where it's pharmacy that's focused on generic medicines, again, with the goal of bringing quality, affordable medicines to more Filipinos. We have about 750 branches nationwide. And then we are also in pharma importation and distribution through our company, IE Medica and MedEthics. So they import medicines into the country, which is good because it helps solve the affordability issue. So if you didn't know, some of our medicines in the country are 30 times more expensive than our other neighboring countries. And I'm not even talking branded versus generic. I'm talking about the exact same molecule, the exact same brand. Here, it's 30 times more expensive. So that's really the problem that we're trying to address in the pharma space. In the clinic space, we have our Healthway clinics. So Healthway has 3 formats. That's Healthway Family, what used to be Family Doc, Healthway Multi-Specialty, which are our mall-based clinics. They're the ones that you'll be more familiar with, the one in Greenbelt, Market, North EDSA. So some of you might have even worked there or moonlighted there. And then we also have our Healthway Corporate Clinics, which is more similar to what Dr. Regine was mentioning, the more occupational health, and where we help our corporate clients on. And with clinics, the goal there is different types of formats so that whatever our patient needs, we're there. So whether it's primary care in the community or it's specialty care in the mall or office-based care, you have a Healthway there for you. And then we also have hospitals. So with hospitals, I mentioned our cancer hospital project. So we plan to have that up and running, as I mentioned, by 2023, but 100 beds all dedicated to cancer. So imagine the same way that in the US, they have an MD Anderson or a Sloan Kettering, that we would have something like that too here in the Philippines, dedicated just to cancer. And we also have a partnership with QualiMed through Ayala Land and the group of Dr. Edwin Mercado. So we in AC Health help to support QualiMed, and they have 4 hospitals, one in Santa Rosa, one in Bulacan, one in Iloilo, and one in Batangas. And then finally, for those of you who are counting along with me in terms of the pillars, the 4th pillar is our digital health pillar. And here we have a company called Vigos, which invests in startups. And they also built the EMR that we use in our Healthway family clinics. And then we have Health Now, which is our telemedicine and telehealth platform. So I invite all of you to download that and to get on the platform if you haven't already. It's a nice way also for you to look into telemedicine and telehealth, whether that could be something you wanted to do. Okay. So that's
it. So are there opportunities for newly licensed physicians? Thank you.
Yes. So definitely we're looking for newly licensed physicians to join us in Healthway. Health Now, you can get on board as a newly licensed physician also. And then QualiMed, we're always looking also for doctors to help us on with the hospital. So all of those, a lot of opportunities for our new doctors. And congratulations to all of you, by the way, our new doctors.
Yes, okay. Doctora, do you see saan papasok yung vaccines dyan later on? Are we going to offer that sa COVID?
Yeah, hopefully, the vaccines discussion is uh, a very important public health discussion to be had. There's a component of it, of course, that's the clinical side, right? Which is you want to make sure that the vaccine is safe and effective and that it works. But there's also a public health side, right? How do you distribute those vaccines and get them to where they are in the first place? Even before we distribute, how do we get those vaccines? We all know that this will be in very large demand globally. Everybody will want a vaccine, and so that's a big public health question. It's also an operational and management question, right? How do you make sure that you have the logistics set up to be able to deliver those vaccines? It's also an ethical question. Who do you prioritize if you only have X number of vaccines? Do we prioritize the frontliners? Do we prioritize the elderly? Do we prioritize the working class, the children? So all of these are big debates that are being had right now in terms of the COVID-19 vaccine. And certainly in the future, where we in AC Health will be looking to support these vaccine efforts because we do want to do our part in getting the economy reopened safely.
Okay. So, do you have any more questions? Samantalahin niyo na si Doktora.
Yeah, please feel free to ask your questions.
Oh, tanungin niyo na kasi eto na siya.
For those of you who have questions on AC Health, you can also visit our website or our Facebook page or our LinkedIn in case you want to know more about us and if you have any more questions.
Yes. So, I don't know if we still have questions. Wala na ba? Okay.
So, mukhang okay na sila.
Wala na. Oy, thank you very much, Doktora. We cannot thank you enough. Sa uulitin, ha? Sana next time ulit, ha?
Yeah, no, a very, very big thank you to the organizers of the PH. When Dr. Anna told me about it, sabi ko, I'm very, very supportive and thankful because I remember being a doctor fresh out of medical school and not knowing what my options were. And so I think it's a really great program and event that you've set up and put together. And really big congratulations to the Young Doctors Philippines team.
May question pa dito, Doktora, o pahabol. Can you flip it again? Where is it? Asan na po? I think the person was asked, yan, si Camille. Good day, Doc. I'd like to ask for insights regarding requirements, etc., to pursue diplomate fellow specialization in corporate occupational medicine. Thank you.
Nako, Doktora, parang that's a question for you as an occupational health physician to answer. To clarify, I'm not an occupational health physician. When people ask me what my specialty is, I say public health. So I will let Doktora answer this question. Go ahead, Doc.
Okay, so actually, the requirements, you have to pass the board, and you should have at least naman lang an experience, no, in practice. Pwede naman yon yung GP ka, tapos nagki-clinic ka, no, para maging member ka ng Philippine College of Occupational Medicine. Now, for you to become a diplomate, no, you will take the basic course. That's a course being given by the Department of Labor and Employment under the Occupational Safety and Health Center. But the people who are the organization that is in charge of handling yung mga doctors, specifically si Philippine College of Occupational Medicine. Ito yun. Yan. Ano dito sa kabila? Yan. No? So, yung specialty namin, no? Hi, Dr. Anna. After the basic course, no, you're required to do a little more practice kasi hahasain ka pa doon sa clinical, kung anong ginagawa mo. And then you'll be evaluated and you can apply for diplomate. Usually, alam ko mga 3 years. I don't know if they changed it, pero parang ganun pa din. So, 3 years practice and then diplomate ka. The diplomate course now is still modular, no? We have 5 modules. Usually, it's a monthly thing. Usually, mga 3 to 4 days lang naman yan. But you have to take the whole course, lahat ng modules, no? The modules are like industrial hygiene, epidemiology, no? Biostatistics, mga ganun siya. Marami, no? So I don't have to go into that. And then after that, you practice as a diplomate. You get to ano pala muna. You pass the diplomate exams and then you pass the OSCE. No? You pass all the requirements. Pag pumasa ka na, then you get conferred. After you get conferred, practice for 5 years and then you apply for fellowship. When you apply for fellowship, you have requirements. You have to be in active practice of occupational medicine, no? And they may come in different forms. Pwede rin naman sa public health, occupational med din yan eh. Pwede rin namang corporate, no? Pwede namang pre-employment ka, general practitioner, pwede ka na. But you just you're going to be assessed. And then you become a fellow after you make a program. Gagawa ka, magsasubmit ka. Tapos i-interviewin ka ng specialty board, no? Kung you are ready to become a fellow. So ganun po ang usually course ng ano. But maybe if I think Dr. Ana and I will talk about the lecture that I'll be having on siguro on the last day. Baka pwede nating maisingit yan, no? Okay.
Yes, pag-usapan natin yan.
Yes. So, Dr. Ana, I'd like to thank Dr. RIZZY.
Ako mga habol ng tanong. Dr. RIZZY, anong comment mo sa mga HMO?
Sa HMOs, Doc? Comment
So,
po?
kasi yung mga doktor talaga, sobrang naman, they're only being paid 300 pesos. Paano yun?
Yeah, no, it's very mahirap talaga yan with the HMOs.
It's a difficult issue.
Yes. And I think it's something that the doctors have to come together also and give their feedback to the HMOs then, right? Because from a business perspective, syempre, I can tell you what the managers and the business people are looking at, right? They want to be able to balance also the cost and at the same time, whatever service you're delivering. And so it has to be a discussion between the doctors and the different HMO management teams na what is the fair rate to be able to give the doctors. So yeah, mahirap talaga, Doc. You brought up, and I know this is a long-standing issue.
Oo, malaki.
The HMO group.
Tapos ayaw nilang bayaran yung mga PPE. So,
but I think, Doc, now with this COVID situation, companies are realizing na it's worth it to pay for health. Dati kasi they were thinking na, it's required lang yan or compliance. But now they see firsthand what's the effect if the health of your employees is not good. Your entire business is shut down. So I'm hopeful na this will help a lot of people realize na the health of your employees is really so important, and it's not something that you can sort of put in the back burner, deprioritize.
Doktora, ilan na po ang QualiMed hospitals?
4. We have 4 QualiMed hospitals. Yeah, so one
in sa QualiMed. Napuntahan ko yung sa Iloilo.
Okay.
And
so
si Dr. Tupas is my friend.
I see. So the one in Santa Rosa, Laguna, and Bulacan, San Jose del Monte, Bulacan, right now those are COVID referral hospitals. So if any of you have COVID patients and you want to refer them, we have upgraded our facilities there specifically for COVID. And then we have another hospital in Batangas, Tanawan, Batangas. It's not called QualiMed. Mercado, yes po. Si Daniel
Mercado. Are you with them or hindi na?
We work with them closely, Doc, on some projects.
Pero hindi ba parang nag-partner kayo or hindi?
Si Ayala Land, Doc. So
parang I knew the Daniel kasi kakilala ko rin si Dr. Mercado. So
okay.
May hospital kayo sa Tanawan.
Yes, that's their Catholic hospital nila actually, Doc. I think it was Doc Mercado's dad pa who built that from the ground up. And so that's also part of the PolyMed network.
Yung sa Laguna, saan banda?
Santa Rosa, Valley.
Sa Valley.
Yes.
Okay.
Doktora, if you had to choose, bakit ho pinili niyo Ayala Health? Kasi di ba marami, when we think of corporate, parang we think of pharma company kaagad eh.
Yes.
Di ba? Oo, pakilinaw lang. May share niyo ng konti. Medyo...
For me, Doc, it was more... for me, Doc, it was more of the vision and what Ayala Health was trying to do na it's different pillars and trying to integrate all of the pillars together. And then I guess just the focus on making healthcare more accessible and affordable. To me, that resonated with me so much na, we have a lot of options for people who can afford healthcare, like all of these high-end hospitals and very, very world-class hospitals that we have. And then for you also have our public hospitals, of course, who are excellent clinical tertiary referral centers also. But a lot of people are somewhere in between. Parang they want to be able to pay for healthcare, but they can't naman pay for a very expensive hospital. And so to me, it's how do you make healthcare so accessible that nobody dies without seeing a doctor, or nobody has to end up in dialysis because we manage their diabetes so well, or they didn't even get diabetes at all. So that to me is like the big dream.
Ako kasi natatakot ako sa ano ba tawag dito? Corporatization of healthcare kasi I practice in the States and then eventually wala nang kinita yung mga doktor.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that? Tapos takot sila sa mga HMOs, gano'n.
Correct. You know, the US...
Parang you have to keep charting for 10 years, gano'n.
Correct. The US system is very interesting in the sense that you can get a lot of insights on the payment models and how they've progressed through the different payment models. So you're right, Doc Ana, na there was the time talaga na it was all of the insurers and the payers who were really dictating healthcare in the US. And now, Doc, that's starting to shift a little bit. So what the US is moving into right now with the Affordable Care Act is more what they call population-based health. And some of you may have heard of it now. It's value-based payments. So they don't pay only on a fee-for-service basis. They also pay based on value and outcome. So how it works is for certain outcome measures, the Medicaid and Medicare, which is kind of like their PhilHealth, will retain a certain portion of your payments, about 1% to 2%, I think. And they will only pay you if you hit certain targets. And those targets are related to very clear outcome measures, like how many of your patients were given this particular type of treatment, how many of your patients did their annual wellness visit. And you only get what's your readmission rate? So after you discharge a patient, are they coming back to you immediately? So very interesting models that you're seeing in the US for payment systems. And in the future, that might be applicable here one day in the Philippines, that we would get paid not only because we provided a service, but based on how well our patients are and how healthy they are. But we're a long way from that pa.
Dr. Ana can do something about that. No? Mag-uusap tayo about that.
Hirap daw.
Nabanggit nyo na. PhilHealth, paano yan? Any thoughts?
Oh my gosh, Doc.
Itabilang ho sila. Hindi ko alam. Mahirap na magsalita. Hindi ko alam.
Mahirap, Doc.
Hindi marinig
live tayo na, Doc. Live. No, I will say that I think one of the biggest difficulties that PhilHealth has is just on data. And we all know this. I think all of us at some point in our career have filled out those manual forms.
Napakahirap. Oo.
And so you can just imagine how do you collect data from forms that are manually filled up. And remember that all of this data is what's used to drive decision making inside PhilHealth, right? In terms of what case rates they should be paying, how much those case rates should be. Do we have fraud cases? May mga nang-abuso ba?
Dapat hulihin yung mga yun.
It's hard, Doc, walang data. And so I think part of being able to solve the PhilHealth problem is trying to upgrade our data collection systems and making sure that we have the right
Tama yun.
methods.
Remember sa nung sa universal healthcare, meron kasing doon, provision that all health data should be submitted to PhilHealth. Now, if you're saying that there's a data collection issue here, dapat ayusin na nila yan bago mag-start yung yung universal healthcare, di ba? Kasi ang dami-dami ng klase ng data. I sat before doon sa mga forum na yan. Hindi ko ma-imagine yung bulk ng data na kukunin ni PhilHealth. Ang dami magsasubmit, no? And sa corporate lang ang dami na. Meron pang accidents, health related din 'yun, di ba? So ang magulo. So sana bago mag-start, maayos muna yung mga systems in place.
Oh, yes, it's so true, Doc.
Okay na tayo, Dr. Jean, Dr. Rizzy, and other. Oo.
Ay, ang ganda-ganda ng natin ngayon, session ngayon. So informative at saka ang daming nalaman ng mga students natin ngayon. I think maraming
ako na lang, ang dami ko nalaman.
Di ba, no? Oh.
Dr. Ana, thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting AC Health and for inviting me to join. It was really a fun session for me also.
Ulitin ha.
Walang mga conference na ganito.
Ito na naman yung mga kailangan, Doc. It's very much needed. So, thank you for organizing.
Kita tayo ulit. Okay.